So it is with great honor that I get a chance to talk to Ambassador Lynn Young. Welcome, Ambassador Lynn Young, to our PathLight Speaker Series. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Irv, and thank you for having me on this series. It's quite a prestigious occasion, and it's the first time I'm participating in something like this. So I want to thank you and the PathLight for the opportunity. It's a great opportunity for me. Looking forward to this discussion.
And by the way, I mean, your family needs no introduction, right? Your dad, Dr. Colville Young, not only was he the Governor General, of course, I was one of his students at Belize Technical College. So yes, he has had your family, and your father in particular has had a massive impact on our nation. So we are very blessed to have you and your family as obviously leading our initiatives, and certainly in foreign policy, to switch gears on you.
Yeah.
You recently presented your credentials in the US just in time for, by the way, for some pretty important crises happening around the world. I know earlier in the week you were quite busy, and probably still are, dealing with the crisis in Haiti. Can you just give the audience just a quick summary of kind of the activities that are going on there? And then I'd like to transition into some foreign policy conversations with you. Can you just give an update on the Haiti activities? Yeah.
So you're right. I came here at one of the most challenging times in the world, not only for Belize, but countries all over the world. And I mean, the COVID situation, obviously, that's the big gorilla in the room, so to speak. But then on top of that, we had the crisis in Haiti with the assassination of the president there. That was an awful situation there. And even as we're grappling with that, we have the earthquake in Haiti that took place last week. So there have been some emergency meetings of the OAS that we've been participating in to try to see how we can assist. There's another emergency meeting coming on tomorrow where we're going to be discussing that some more. The Haitian president and some other foreign ministers will be speaking at that meeting. And we are part of CARICOM as well as we are part of SECA, and both organizations have been doing their best to try to help in these situations. In addition to the Haitian situation, of course, there are the challenges in Nicaragua, and Nicaragua is a very good friend of Belize. We're both Central American countries, and so, we try to connect with them and to see how we can help them in their challenges too. Bearing in mind that we have a role also, the biggest challenge for us, of course, is the existential one, that is the one with Guatemala. So I've had conversations with the ambassador from Guatemala already, and I'll be having another meeting with her. It's all been virtual so far because of COVID, but it's been productive. So those are some of the challenges that face us, as well as, I mean, COVID has been everything, and then there's also the interaction with the State Department. So it's been very, very busy.
As you are aware, Dr. Zabane visited with us in one of our first PathLight speakers.
Yeah, I saw that interview, very good. Yeah.
And it was excellent. We had an excellent conversation, no different than this one, actually, where we get to really think about the future of our country. We talked a lot in that discussion around sustainable human development. And I'd love for you to touch on, as an energy expert, in thinking about sustainable development from a use of energy and the future of Belize, especially in the context of global warming and how we need to reimagine the way we're thinking about energy as a resource for development. I'd love your thoughts on how you're thinking about this.
That's very good. And interestingly enough, I think maybe in some ways we were ahead of our time in Belize. I think Costa Rica might be the only country in Central America that has as much renewable energy in its portfolio as Belize.
So Ambassador, I'd love to pivot then now to education. As you know, everybody in this audience care about education very deeply. We see it as a powerful tool for national transformation. We focus at PathLight in two areas: teacher training, which Adeli talked about at the very beginning. We touch about 20% of the teachers in Belize every year from a teacher training perspective. And of course, we have our sponsorship program with over 175 students now. Actually, we're getting ready with Dr. Zabane to do a handoff of 60 new scholarships this year. So quite excited about that. From your perspective, Ambassador, when you think about education as a strategy, and even in foreign policy, what are the areas you are focused on when you think about education as a pillar in how Belize approaches foreign policy and engaging the international agencies, even engaging the diaspora, of whom many are on this call right now?
Yes, well, as you know, that's a passion of mine too, and probably because I grew up in a family of educators. Like I said, my parents and their parents were educators. I'm one of the first ones in my family to move away from being a teacher and to go into engineering. But I saw the value of education very early, and I'm a passionate believer in education. I think, I sat on the board for UB for about 10 years. I was actually the vice chairman there for a while. And one of the things that I saw was that we don't have enough opportunity for our students to get a higher education. We need to set some goals to get our people educated. I spoke earlier about, how we moved BL forward. It was really through educating the employees there, training them. And not everyone gets a bachelor's degree, right? Some get certificates in technician, some get certificate in accounting, etc. But at the end of the day, we have to get that done. Now, what PathLight is doing is excellent. Unfortunately, and I know Minister Zabani knows that too, it's just not enough, right? Which is one of the reasons why successive governments have been pushing for free education, at least up towards, say, high school level. I know a lot of people say, oh, we can't afford it. My response to them is that we can't afford not to.
We do agree at PathLight. We do agree that this is a grand collaboration. That the efforts that we do at PathLight, and we know this in many discussions with Dr. Zabane, we see ourselves as but one component in this grand collaboration. It requires the government of Belize, non-governmental agencies like us with technical expertise that are very focused in, give a good example. When COVID happened, we pivoted very quickly to hybrid models for teacher training, which had zero impact in terms of our outreach. So it requires the NGO community, it requires the international agencies to come alongside so we could be targeted in our funding and approach to education and coherent and execution against one strategy. It requires the local business community, which I want to touch on because you are a pretty important business leader, in Belize with BEL. It requires the business community to also participate, and it requires a local community. So we see this as a grand collaboration that is required, no one agency, and we see that each has to play a part in national transformation. I'd love to touch on, and of course we need to talk about the diaspora, right, and the impact it can have. I want to talk about two components of what I just said. One is the local business community and how they can help. And the other one is the impact that the diaspora can have.
It's a tough one. I know at BEL, like I said, BEL recognized that the way to excellence is really investing in people, investing in its employees, get them educated, get them trained. And then BEL started also investing in the education of the community. Now that's where I think we could do more as businesses in Belize. And again, we need to put our minds to how we can encourage businesses to invest more in the community, in the education of the community. A lot of businesses in Belize provide scholarships, etc. But we can use technology, for example, to try to help to grease these vehicles, right? One of the things that you and I discussed before, you guys have such excellent knowledge of technology and all that, is to maybe set up some sort of computerized database where using the web, using the new technology, where a student can easily go and see what scholarships are available. I saw that when I was in Canada, and my kids are, benefit from it. It's very easy to go on the internet and see what scholarships are available from where for university, say anywhere in the US or in Canada. We don't have that in Belize. One of the things we have to get more businesses to realize is that you're operating in the community, and the health of the community, the education of the community will in the long term drive your business. That's just saying that if you're not around for the short term, you won't be around for the long term. So of course they have to look at their bottom line and make sure they're successful there. But at the end of the day, right, if the community is not healthy, you have more burglaries, you have more holdups, and that starts affecting business, as it is affecting business in some part of the country already, right?
There's an interesting comment in the chat channel, Ambassador, that the same technology that we use, you talk about how technology can transform. And even in this conversation we're having right now, which is enabled by Zoom and virtual conferencing, it said, the comment says the technology needs to be made more accessible and affordable for all. And the actual quote is for the masses. No, totally agree. And when you think about that from how do we democratize access through technology, and how are you reflecting on that? I mean, I think just a comment in terms of where we are with COVID and what COVID has brought to the forefront, the digital divide can cause a massive difference in outcome for students who cannot afford, which is to the point of the comment in the chat channel, children who cannot afford.
No, absolutely. That's a very, very good point. And I know it's something that not only Belize, but governments around the world, and even here in Washington, when we speak at the OS, and those are things that we are looking at very closely. The IDB, for example, has pumped more than $3 million into the education sector in Belize, but a big part of it also is to try to give students access, like you said, to the technology, right? I think with the government owning BTL, and I know there's a lot of subsidies going on there, we should be able to address those issues. Because again, yes, BTL is a private company, Smart is a private company, but we as a country will have to decide, listen, this is part of the cost of educating our people.
So we've talked about this idea of a grand collaboration that is required, that it's going to take more than the government and a few NGOs. We need the international development agencies, we need the local business community, we need the diaspora, right? And so for the diaspora in the audience right now, the question for all of us is, what can I do? And from your perspective, Ambassador, what can we do?
Yeah, so I'm still learning. And I have to say, I've been getting some good support from our councils in Miami and Chicago and LA. And especially Ambassador Mendes and his wife, and we have a group here called the Champions of Belize that's been giving some good advice.
We were having this conversation in 2025, 4 years out. What would you consider success on the foreign policy front, and then specifically, so foreign policy in general, and then on the education front specifically?
Well, in terms of foreign policy, I think the greatest success in 2020, by 2025, I hope that we get the Guatemalan thing solved.
Yes.
There's huge opportunities for us in terms of trade with Guatemala and Central America. And if we can get that situation solved, it'll help our country tremendously. But in terms of education, 2025 is a little bit too close for me. I think that I would like to see us set some targets. And let's say, I don't think it's unreasonable to say we want at least 60% of our students have the opportunity to get a tertiary degree, whether it be business or law or electrician or welder or mechanic, whatever, agriculture. At this point in time, the last I checked when I was at the UB board, it's like 20% of the students are getting a tertiary degree. That is ridiculous. I'm sorry to say it. It's our country, and you're not going to fix a problem if you don't face it, right? And we got to face it. Our people are they're not getting the opportunities for education. So in 2025, I want to see us at least 60% of our people getting a solid or have the opportunity to get a good education. That's a big one for me.
Well, Ambassador, sign us up for that goal, because that's the journey we are on. And it's a similar message we've given to Dr. Zabaneh, and we are working very closely with him and his staff. We're working very closely with the Teacher Training Institute, which has been formed in the Ministry of Education. We have a broad strategic partnership with the Ministry of Education, but we too are very aligned on how do we significantly move the needle to educate our next generation.
So important, so important. Thank you guys for all that you're doing. I mean, in addition to the monies that you're putting in there, just bringing these issues to the forefront, getting everybody on the same page. And you know what it does, right? You got to get it like a snowball, right? You start with a small ball, but you get more and more people involved, and then it takes on a life of its own, right? And that's where we need to get with this education thing and get people to understand that education is really, really our best solution for our country to get where we want to reach.
Ambassador, we are very, very grateful for the time that you spent with us.